Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antaha pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akila shakti darasvadamnam अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth session on Isha Upanishad or Ishavasya Upanishad, also called Yagniya Mantropanishad or Kanva Upanishad, samhitopanishad. So, it's got various synonyms. And what we have been doing is, over the past 5 weeks, we have been doing constant contemplation of the Isha Upanishad, and we are making steady progress. We are certainly making good progress here. So what I want to do is, let's think about the Rishi, Svayambu, Manu, Dadichi, Yagnavalkya, Kanva Rishi, and all the Acharyas. The Devata is Yagnanamaka Paramatma. The Chandas for these 18 amazing mantras is Anishtub, Trishtub, and Jagati. Yeah. So very briefly, let's do the introduction. But as you know, over the last 5 weeks, we have done 3 mantras. So what are these mantras? Ishavasyam idang sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitaha magridaha kasya sviddhanam kurvanneve iha kuru karmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha evam tvayi na anyat eto asti na karma lipyate nare asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigachanti yekecha atmahano janaha. So these are all the amazing verses again that we saw. So what is the contextual relevance of the whole Ishavasya Upanishad? So let's just think about this a little bit more. Yeah. So I think that's important. Again, always coming back to the basics, always coming back to the fundamentals and trying to understand what is it that we are trying to contemplate here. So here is a situation where Svayambu Manu, who is the Manu of the Svayambu Manvantara, which is a very first Manvantara, where he is being attacked by the Asuras and he is going to his grandson who is Yagna for protection. Okay, so this is how he is approaching. And Svayambu Manu is praying to Yagnanamaka Paramatma over 18 verses to protect him and this Manvantara. So the philosophy and the spirit for us is, we as souls in the sadhana sharira are also constantly being attacked by these various asuras called the desires and so on. And how do we tackle this problem? So unless we surrender to the Paramatma, it's very difficult for us to tackle all these things that bother us day in and day out. So that is how we need to think about this Isha Upanishad. And the other thing is, the first 3 mantras, one may ask a question, why is Swayambhu Manu saying all this? Why is he doing all this? Okay, he is actually describing the nature or the knower of Brahman in the first 3 verses. So that is the basics there. These 3 verses talk about what are the qualities of an adhikari, what are the qualities of a mumukshu, what are the qualities of somebody who is actually contemplating on Brahman, and Swayambhu Manu is doing. And why is he doing this? As you know, he is praying to Yagnanamaka Paramatma, and it is a self-contemplation. So he is exactly doing that. He is surrendering himself. He is in deep meditation and he is self-contemplating as to how he should approach the Paramatma. Okay, so that is what the Isha Upanishad is telling us. And in that way, when we read this Isha Upanishad as seen by Kanva Rishi, Dadichi, Yagnavalkya, and so on, we understand how we can apply it to our day-to-day life. Yeah. So that is the introduction. And those 3 amazing verses We have done it over the last 5 weeks. Let me go through this again. Om Ishavasyam idang sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tera tyaktera bunjitaha ma gridaha kasyasvidhanam. In this verse, he said this whole world belongs to Paramatma. Whatever he gives, you take. Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha evam tvai na anyad eto asti na karma lipyate nare. In this verse, Svayambu has described how we have to do our karma. What is the Nishkama Karma Yoga? When will we not have the karmic imprints on our linga sharira? When we do our karma. Kuruvan eva iha. The iha there is the Paramatma. So dedicate whatever we do to the Paramatma. Now, if we don't do this, and if we run our transactions of life as Atma Hano Janaha, then what happens to that? Asuriya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamsta pretya abhigachanti ekecha atmahano janaha. Okay, so those are the three amazing verses that we did. So once Svayambu Manu, we have understood in what spirit he is approaching Yagna, then he is praying. The next prayer there, that is the fourth mantra for today's satsang, is how is this Svayambu Manu thinking about this Paramatma? What are the esoteric attributes of Brahman? What does he think about this Paramatma when he is actually approaching him in deep contemplation? And from that, we should also take how should we approach Paramatma when we are in deep contemplation or meditation. So this is the new verse for today. And he says, Anejadekam manaso javiyo naina devaha apnuvan purvamarshat taddhavato anyan atyeti tishtati tasmin apo matarishva dadati. Okay, so this is one of the most esoteric verse that needs to be dissected out in such great detail for us to squeeze the philosophy out of it. Okay, and that is the beauty of Isha Upanishad. Not for the faint-hearted. We have to invest our brains and intellects to understand what is it that Swayambhuva Manu is saying here. Okay. Anejadekam manaso javiyo naina devaha apnuvan purvamarshat taddhavato anyan atyeti tishtat tasmin apo matarishva dadati. Okay, so let's look at the first word. Anejad ekam. So Yagna is talking about Paramatma, and he is actually talking about Paramatma, and he is saying this Paramatma is Anejat. And he has used two words there, Anejat Ekam. It's combined together, but we have to separate it open. So Anejat and Ekam. So Anejat. So who is Anejat here? So just bear with me a minute. Let me just sort some IT issues here. Okay, I have sorted it out. Yeah, okay. So Anejat. Okay, let's look at the first word, Anejat. What does that mean? So Anejat, you have to separate it into An plus Ejat. Ejat has got two meanings. It comes from the root word Ajur. Ajur can have two ways of looking at it. Ajur means something that is vibrating, something that is moving, something that is movable. That is one basic sense of Ajur or Ajati. And the other one is trembling or shaking. Okay, so that is another, something that is trembling or shaking is also called Ajur. And that is the root dhatu for Ajati. Okay, so you need to look at it in these two ways. How is Paramatma Anejat? To understand why Paramatma or Bhagavanta is Anejat, we should first understand what is Ajat. Ajat means that which is trembling or shaking. There are only two ways in which certain things, you and I, we tremble only for two things or we shake. Either we are shaking out of fear, or if the temperature outside is very cold. I've just been out for a walk and I've just come back and it's very cold here at this point. So it's either very cold, we shake or tremble, or if we are afraid of something, then we tremble and shake. Okay. So in this context, where Svayambu or Manu is praying to Yajnanamaka Paramatma. The context there is, we take this, Yajat here means that which trembles or shakes out of fear. Okay, so unajat means fearless. Okay, so that is the first basics, first important philosophical sense of God. Who is Paramatma? Who is the supreme being? He is called Anejat. Why? Because he is fearless. Okay, so that is an important idea of Isha Upanishad, that we always think about this Bhagavanta as fearless. Okay, why is he fearless? Because he is omniscient and he is omnipotent. For us as souls, when we have ignorance, it is always our ignorance that leads to fear. Okay? Or it is our own limitations of capacity to do something that leads to fear. Think about this problem. We as souls, we have these issues of ignorance and limitations of our capacity. Whereas the Supreme Lord is the other way around. He's at the other end of the spectrum. He is omniscient and he is omnipotent. That is why the Upanishads, particularly if you see very many Upanishads, Supreme is always celebrated as Abhayam. Okay, look at Katha Upanishad. Yes setu rijaranam aksharam brahma yat param abhayam titirshitam param nachiketam shakemahi. Go back to that verse that we have done last year. Abhayam. This Supreme Paramatma is called Abhayam. Go at Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. This particular Adhyaya, it says so many times Abhayam, Abhayam, and Abhayam, and describes this Paramatma as Abhayam. Look at Vishnu Sahasranama. This is very interesting. Although this Supreme Lord is Abhayam, he gives us Bhaya. Okay, so that is the situation that we are in. We are in samsara. This samsara is full of fear. Okay, whether we like it or not, that is the basic issue here. This samsara is full of fear. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, day after, midweek, whatever, next month. We are always thinking about this in our personal life, in our professional life, what is going to happen to our finances, etc., etc. There is always fear everywhere. So that is the samsara. So in Vishnu Sahasranama, there is a particular verse, Bhayakrit Bhayanashanaha. So Vishnu is celebrated as Bhayakrit Bhayanashanaha. So Bhayakrit means he gives fear to samsara. That is for us as souls, as samsaras. And then once we have the right approach to our philosophical progress, what will happen is we become fearless. Okay, how? Because he destroys the fear and he gives them moksha. When we become fearless, that is, once we have done Shastra, Abhyasa, and Jnana, we will become fearless. When we become fearless, that is our state of liberation, also called moksha. So Vishnu Sahasranama captures this idea very, very nicely. Bhayakrit, Bhayanashanaha. Okay. So the first thing for us to understand is, think about Paramatma as Anejat. He is fearless. The more we think he is fearless, then we understand that this Bhagavanta is inside us as our Antaryamin and he is protecting us all the time. So when we take that philosophy into consideration, eventually as we progress, we also become fearless. Okay, so hold on to that thought. Let's finish off a very superficial sense of what Ejat means. Ejat means moving. That which moves is that which vibrates, that moves is called Ejat. Okay. Unajat. So Paramatma can be unajat in this sense that he is immovable. Okay. So the question there, what moves? Yeah. So that's a philosophical problem. What are the things that move in space? The things that move in space are the ones that are finite entities. A finite entity like this mobile phone or this cup moves because they have a limitation. They are finite. Okay. Whereas our supreme Brahman, who is defined as Bruhantohi Asmin Gunaha, this one is all pervasive in time, space, and gunas. And if he is all pervasive in space, he is how can you perceive him as all that he moves? Okay, that is one idea there. And of course, I got another slide that discusses this a little bit more detail. How can an all pervasive entity move? So Anejat actually also gives us an idea of omnipresence of the Supreme. If something is everywhere, how can it move? Only the ones that are finite move. Okay? It does not mean Brahman is an inert entity. That is not the view of Svayambu Manu. What he is talking about is the omnipresence of the Supreme. So this Anejat captures the ideas of omniscience, omnipotency and omnipresence of the Supreme, which is across all philosophies and all religions of the world. Okay? And the beauty of Isha Upanishad is, in that one word, Anejat, we have captured the ideas of omnipresence, the omnipotency, and the omniscience of the Supreme Lord. Okay? So that is the philosophy of Anejat. So now let us look at it from what we have done in other Upanishads. I just want to bring you back to the Katha Upanishad, where we have done all this, isn't it? Yadidam kincha jagat sarvam prana ejati nishrutam mahat bayam vajram udyutam ya etat viduhu amrutaste bhavati. Bhayadasya agnihi tapati, bhayad tapati suryaha, bhayad indrascha, vayushcha, mrutyur davati panchamaha. Taittiriya Upanishad also says the same thing. Gita also says the same thing. So these verses say that ejati, the rest of the souls, that is the infinite souls that are out there, including all the Tattva Abhimani Devatas, they are ejati. Yadidam kincha jagat sarvam prana ejati. Everything else, ejati, it trembles. But this one is anejat. That is what Ishavasya Upanishad says. Okay. Everything else is trembling, in the sense that they're trembling in the sense they don't want to do wrong. Because if they do wrong, they know they're going to have the consequences of the karmic imprints that are going to happen. So it is from that perspective, the Tattvabhimamni Devatas, for example, they are always trembling in the sense they always want to do the right things. And for us, we should have these two approaches. And I've got a question. We have discussed this before, and I want one of you to pick up this point. Which is better, or how do we start our philosophical progress? We have to take a step, isn't it? A journey of 1,000 miles, start with one step. Yeah. What is that first step that we should take towards Paramatma? Is it the fear of God, or is it the love of God? Okay, so I just want to open this up for today's, interactive session. And in the meantime, I'll also sort my IT. I'm not able to get my video on unless you're able to see me. Okay, so who wants to take up this question? Which is better, fear of God versus love of God?
Namaskara, sir. We can take either, because it depends on the person. That will transform to the ultimate Jnana Bhakti Vairagya. We can start with fear, okay? At least we are remembering the God 24/7, like Kamsa example. Kamsa may be a bad example, but we have to start somewhere. You cannot say, I start with love and Bhakti and Jnana Vairagya. If people have that caliber, they can start with that level. So, but you have to start some point. That is my personal thinking.
Thank you very much, Krishna Rajdi. Welcome to our program. I think you're new to this forum. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, thank you for that contribution. Anybody else has got another different view here? Okay, fine. Thank you. So I fully agree with Krishna Rajdi. So fear can motivate souls like us to move in the right direction. Yeah, the Shreyas. So I think it's a positive thing to be fearful of God, okay? But that is not the final solution. To start our philosophical journey with a fear of God, at least will prompt us to move in the right direction towards Shreyas that Yama has described so much to Nachiketa, okay? And that Shreyas means what? Moving towards the knowledge of God. But ultimately, that knowledge of God needs to mature into bhakti, because without devotion, there is no grace. We know that. So fear of God actually has to transform into the love of God, because the fear will move us towards Shreyas. That is for souls like us. Tattvabhimani Devatas, the exalted souls, their approaches are slightly different. But for us, we are meager souls, right? So we have to start somewhere. So when we have that ultimate realization that my Antaryamin is protecting me, that leads to the fearlessness in us. And how do we realize that there is an Antaryamin in me? This is not an easy realization. This takes, for many of us, millions of births to actually to understand and contemplate this Antaryamin in every day of our lives. So that Antaryami Jnana takes it's such a lot of effort is required. And when we put that Antaryamitva into our daily practice, then eventually that leads to the fearlessness in us. Okay. So as I said, we are full of fear. Samsara is full of fear. And in fact, our Acharya says, and this is a self-test for us, are we really spiritually progressed? Yes, I'll raise my hands. Probably I am a hypocrite. And there are many of us who think that we know stuff, but actually we don't know anything. And how do we actually make an assessment? How do you make your own internal reflection as to you are actually in the right spiritual progress? Are you that you are actually making spiritual progress? That first sign is when you become fearless. Okay? And that is what Acharyas tell us. When you have that internal, self consciousness that you are becoming increasingly fearless in your daily transactions of life, that is when you know that you are in the right path towards spiritual progress. Okay. If for us, we are getting, stressed out for every damn thing, then certainly we are not making spiritual progress, because we haven't understood that there is an Antaryamin in me who is protecting me, and he is actually letting me do things based on my Purushakya Prayatna, my Anadi Karma, and Jiva Swabhava. Okay, that is how you make the philosophical process. So again, that idea of ejati and anejati brings you this idea of our own self-reflection. So the knowledge of the eternality of souls can tackle our fear of death. That is what Krishna has said in the 2nd chapter, 11th verse and the 12th verse. Yeah, so we are all very familiar with chapter 2, 11th verse. Yeah, I leave it to you to self-manana here. The knowledge of dependent doership removes the constant fear in samsara, personal and professional. So these are key ideas for us to think about, not just for this session, but actually for the rest of our lives. We need to be thinking it is very, very difficult to put this in practice. But as Krishna said, Abhyasena tu kaunteya. So unless we put this in practice and remind ourselves all the time, we cannot make spiritual practice. Okay, so hope that makes sense about anejat. So the next one is even more profound. So Svayambu Manu says, Anejad Ekam. So immediately he says that Supreme Paramatma is Anejat, and he is also Ekam. Ekam is a very, very important word in Upanishads. You will see this word Ekam that appears in so many Upanishads, and I've just listed a few here. I've taken Chandogya Upanishad. Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asit Ekam Yeva Advitiyam. Very popular, Shruti of Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 6, and we have done this again a couple of years ago. Ekam Yeva Advitiyam. So what is that Ekam there? Look at Nasadiya Sukta of Rigveda. Anida Vatam Swadaya Tad Ekam Tasmadha Anya Parakinchanasa. And the Nasadiya Sukta goes. So here, Anida Vatam Swadaya Tad Ekam. There was this being before creation, there breathing windlessly. That one was one. Anida Vatam Swadaya Tad Ekam. This is a very profound sukta, as you know, Nasadiya Sukta. Look at Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Eko Devaha Sarvabhuteshu Gudaha Sarvavyapi Sarvabhutantaratma Karmadi Akshaha Sarvabhutadi Vasaha Sakshi Cheta Kevalo Nirgunascha. Eko Devaha. We can say there is only one Deva, but the other way of looking is this Deva is Eka. So Eka has got a different meaning there. Look at Katha Upanishad. Our Yama has told this so many times. Eko vashi sarvabhuta antaratma. Ekam rupam bahudayak karoti. Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. So many Ekas that come. So what is that Eka there? And again, it is a very profound word of the Upanishad. Eka can mean one. Deva, one. Unique. That is another idea. There is nobody similar to him. He is unique. He is only one. There can be only one Paramatma. And he is unique. He is independent. He is of an entirely different category. We are all dependent. Yeah, but this Paramatma, this Supreme Lord, is an entirely independent category. There is none like him. And he is same everywhere. Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, every aspect, Vyuha form, Avatara form, Bimbarupa form, Avesha form, Amsa form, they are all the same. That is also an idea of Ekam. Look at the etymology of Ekam. We have done this before, right? Yesha eva karoti ekaha. Yesha eva karoti. He is the only one who is the creator of the universe. Okay? He is the Sarvakarta. He is the omnipotent. Okay? So these are all some of the ideas of Ekam. Okay? Just for completeness, I want to finish off with this Chandogya Upanishad the sixth chapter, first verse here. Ekam eva advitiyam. So what does that advitiyam then mean? What does that eva mean? So we need to get that right here so that we get everything in context. So here, and again, we have discussed this before, always good to revise. I want to bring this very famous saying of Sri Yamunacharya of Visishtadvaita school. Okay? When he was in the Parantaka Cholan's kingdom. Parantaka Cholan was the son of Aditya Cholan in Tamil Nadu. Okay, and in his kingdom, Yamunacharya, in his palace, he makes a statement in praise of the Chola king. And this is actually talking about this Ekameva Advitiyam that Visishtadvaita Acharya Yamunacharya describes, which resonates with so many other schools of Vedanta, Vaishnava schools of Vedanta. When he says, when it is said that our Chola king is one without a second, that is exactly what it means. Ekam eva advitiyam, one without a second. In the world, it only rules out the existence of any other ruler equal to him, but not the existence of his son, his staff, or his queen. That is the proper approach to Ekameva Advitiyam. Because look at Shvetashvatara Upanishad. What does it say? Natat samashcha abhi adhikashcha drishyate. That is what Shvetashvatara Upanishad talks about Paramatma. Natat samashcha. There is nobody equal to him. Abhi adhikashcha. Adhikashcha means somebody who is above him. Drishyate. Nowhere is it seen. So this Paramatma is called Ekam because there is nobody equal to him, nobody who is superior to him, and he is a unique, independent being. So that fearless Brahman is a unique, independent being, is the resounding conclusion of any Upanishad that you take. Yeah, and I can say you with a firm sense of conviction that Ekam means there uniqueness and independence and the greatness, the Sarva omnipotence and the Sarva Kartrutva, Swatantratva of Brahman. It does not mean that there is only Brahman alone and all else are an illusion. It 100% does not mean that. Certainly, that is not what Svayambu Manu is saying here. If he was saying that, look at the contextual relation. Here is a Svayambu Manu who is praying to Yagnanamaka Paramatma. Okay, that is, there is a soul there. Svayambhuva Manu is a soul, and he is praying to this Brahman who is there as a Yagnanamaka Paramatma. So you will have to always take the contextual relevance of what you are talking. Okay, so next one is amazing, and I presumably we'll spend about 15 minutes talking about the next few verses. I hope I'll reach this last verse here. Apo Matarishwa Dadati. I want to reach that today. Let's see what happens. So Swayambhu has said, Anejadekam. Then he says, Manaso Javiyaha. That Paramatma is Manaso Javiyaha. There are three levels of looking at this. So let's see what that means. Okay. Manasaha Javiyaha. Javiyaha means faster, swifter. Javiyaha means, that is what literally in Sanskrit it means. Javiyaha means that which is swifter or faster. And Swayambhuva Manu says that Paramatma is swifter and faster than the mind. Manasaha Javiyaha. He is even faster than the mind. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's look at the philosophy there. So in the Vedic times, horse was the fastest animal. So that literally what it means to say Ashwa. Ashwa means Ashu Va. That which moves very fast is called Ashu Va, is called Ashwa. In modern parlance, it could be a supersonic jet, or it could be a spacecraft, or it could be a spacecraft that is moving very fast. But our Vedic rishis have thought about this in great detail. They've said, whatever that you have, the gross material things that moves faster, actually your mind is even faster than that. Okay. Let's take an example of the spacecraft. This spacecraft, let's take Voyager. Voyager has been traveling for 20, 30 years and it is in the interstellar space. But with my mind, I can say, okay, I want to think about Andromeda galaxy. I am in the Andromeda galaxy in my mind right now. Whereas this Voyager 1 is going to, I don't know how many thousands of years it's going to take to go to Andromeda galaxy. So in that example, the mind is very, very fast. So think about this. Mind moves very fast. Okay. But Svayambu says this Paramatma is even faster than the mind. Okay. So I got a small quiz there. What is the name of this form of the Lord which is faster than the mind? So who is going to answer that quick quiz? I've got this image here. What is that Paramatma's name that gives you that metaphorical sense that that God is faster than the mind?
Hayagriva?
Fantastic answer. I think one was Padmajaji. I couldn't recognize the other's voice. Sorry, because I can't see the video here. So who was the second person?
It was me, Ajit.
Ajit, thank you, Ajit. Fantastic. So yeah, Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma. Okay, and look at this. Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma has been given, it's very metaphorical, right? He's got a face of a horse. That's a very metaphorical thing. It is not literally he's got a face of a horse. For those who think he's literally got face of the horse, I don't know how to help them, but this is a metaphorical thing to say that horse moves very fast, whereas this Paramatma moves even faster than this horse. Okay, so that is the idea there. So that is exactly what Taittiriya Upanishad says. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Even my mind cannot reach him. Okay, so that is the philosophy there when Taittiriya Upanishad says that aprapya manasasaha, and this whole idea of Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma. Okay. So what is it that we are thinking about? When I say that the Supreme Lord is faster than the mind, what it essentially means is my mind is a material thing, right? So with a material mind, can I actually reach something that is non-material? So that is the idea there that you need to build up. With my material mind, can I actually grasp the non-material Brahman? Or you could also say, your Jiva Swarupa also has got a mind. That is an eternal mind. Okay? Then you can say, I am a very limited being. With my limited eternal Indriya, will I ever be able to grasp the greatness of the Supreme Brahman in all his glories? I certainly can't. I can touch the Meru mountain, but I can't hug it. Yeah, and that is exactly the idea here. When I say aprapya manasa saha means I cannot grasp him fully. That is something we need to understand. And this is what Svayambu Manu is praying here. Okay, so this is one approach to manaso javiyaha. Then the next one is manaso javiyaha as this second aspect. How do you look at second way of looking at this? So as I've told you before, in Upanishad Chintana, we should always, whenever there is a jada that is being discussed, whenever there is a non-sentient thing that is being discussed, you should always think about the sentient being behind this. Okay. Remember that most important sutra, Badarayana, Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Visesha Anugatibhyam. This is the rules. This is the rules that has been given by Veda Vyasa in Brahma Sutra for us. Whenever there is a non-sentient thing, always think about a sentient being behind it. So now we have to think about, when I say Manasaha Javiyaha, that this Paramatma is swifter than the mind, I need to think about all the Abhimani Devatas of the mind. Okay, so that is the next level Chintana. So let's look at who are all the Abhimani Devatas of the mind. Anybody wants to take this up? Who wants to tell us all the Abhimani Devatas of the mind? Because we've done it on a few occasions.
Rudra Devaru, Chandra.
So Rudra and then Chandra. Go on. Anybody else? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think you got the majority of the ideas there. So here, that is why here, what becomes important is, our sessions that we did on creation and the journey of souls, and we looked at all the various 24, 25 tattvas and all the Abhimani Devatas, all those things you will have to apply here. Okay, so we know that there is the Mula Prakriti, then Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, then there is the Mahat Tattva, then there is the Ahankara Tattva. Ahankara Tattva becomes three, right? Vaikarika, Tejasa, and Tamasa. Vaikarika becomes the mind. Okay, so our Shastras tell us, so I'm going to just pick up the top line here. The top line there is the Vaikarika, the Manas. Manas, our Purusha Shukta, for example, it says Chandrama Manaso Jataha. Chandra Devata comes from the mind of the Supreme. Therefore, he is the Abhimani Devata of the mind. Okay, Chandra is ranked number 12 in the Vedic pantheon. Yeah, so Chandra, he's at the lower end of the spectrum. So from Chandra, we have to move up. Indra and Kama, they are also Mano Abhimani Devatas. Brihaspati, he is also a Mano Abhimani. And of course, we all know that Garuda, Sesha, and Rudra are also Mano Abhimani Devatas. Okay, I'll come to Parvati, Chaturmukha Brahma, and Sri Tattva, Lakshmi in the next slide. So when you look at it from one angle, Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, Indra, Kama, Brihaspati, and Chandra are all described in the Vedas as the Mano Abhimanis. Of course, we celebrate Rudra as a key Mano Abhimani Devatas. And unless you pray to Rudra, you don't stand a chance of actually controlling your mind. Period. That is a fundamental position why Rudra should be worshipped. There are folks out there who don't want to do that, who want to directly go to Paramatma. Good luck to them. But for many of us in other schools of Vedanta, unless we have Rudra's grace, there is no scope. Yeah. So Rudra is a Mano Abhimani Devata. Never forget that. Garuda is a Mano Abhimani Devata. Sesha. So these three folks are very important in Vedic philosophy. Yeah. So now Manaso Javiyaha there means even these exalted Tattvamimani Devatas like Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, Indra, Kama, Brihaspati, and Chandra cannot know him fully. Remember, these Tattvabhimani Devatas are Aporoksha Jnanis. Yeah, they already have a knowledge of the Brahman, but they don't have the knowledge of the Brahman fully. They also know some aspects of it, but they don't know fully. That is the truth. And that is what the Shastras tell us. Manasaha Javiyaha. Now here, you also need to look at Manasaha Javiyaha from a third angle here. Okay. So the first thing we said was the material mind. The second aspect was we took some of the Tattva Abhimani Devatas of the mind. The third aspect is to go deeper into it. Okay, now we have to think about our Panchakoshas. We have the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manonmaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya Kosha in the Pindanda. Okay, whereas in the Brahmanda, you have Mula Prakriti, you have Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva. Now you have to link it up with the Pindanda. Okay, how does that link up? When you look at Manonmaya Kosha, so your mind, we have done this before, right? Your mind has got 5 components. Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, and Chetana. Okay. So Manas, when you look at it from this angle, Indra, I've told you already. So Indra is a Mano Abhimani. Parvati is a Buddhi Abhimani. Ahankara means the I-ness. Yeah. So Ahankara is Rudra. Chitta or memory is Chaturmukha. And deep memory is Chetana. And that corresponds to Manonmaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. Think about this problem. So we get sensory inputs into our mind. The mind just processes it. Whereas the Buddhi then processes it further and says this is right or wrong. And then the Ahankara aspect of your mind says, I am now making this decision that I will do this. So the first 3 components of the mind, this is the greatness of our Rishis and our philosophy. Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas component of mind is in the present tense. It is right now. This is what is happening. But when we get this experience and we get this knowledge, then that goes into the memory shell. The 4th component, that memory shell is called Chitta. And the deep memory shell is called Chetana. So our mind operates when the Chitta and Chetana, they bring forth the memory of the past and the buddhi also brings the sensory data of the present, and the ahankara will make a decision. Okay, so that is how the mind works according to Vedic rishis. So in this context, we now have to understand Indra, Parvati, Rudra, Chaturmukha, even Shri Tattva, who is constantly a companion of the Paramatma. Their knowledge is also limited. Even for them, this is what applies. Manasaha Javiyaha. So for these Abhimani Devatas also, they can't reach him fully. And our Shastras tell us, and we were doing some discussions this morning, even Sri Tattva is still not fully aware of all the greatness of the Supreme Paramatma. She's still contemplating on that, and she's still not aware. Okay, she's still counting the greatness of the qualities of Paramatma. So the key idea of Manasaha, Javiyaha in those three aspects is that none of the above can know Paramatma fully. Okay, so the reason why we are doing all this is prakarana, contextual relevance. Yeah, contextual relevance is what? Next word. What does the next word says? Naina devaha apnuvan. Na yenat devaha apnuvan. Okay, na is no. Yenat means it. It means what? This Paramatma. Devaha. Devaha means two things. We have only discussed the Mano Abhimanis, but there are lots of other Tattva Abhimani Devatas, right? Karma Indriya, Jnana Indriya, Tanmatras, Panchabhutas, etc., etc. They are all encompassed in this term, Devaha. And also, Devam Indriyam. Deva, Indriyas, your material Indriyas are also described as Devas, okay, in the scripture. So they also mean Indriyas, okay. So none of these, of course, can reach him. Apnuvan can reach him. Yeah. Na ena devaha apnuvan. So all this karma indriya, jnana indriya, the abhimani devatas, all those things should come to your contemplation at this point. Yeah. So when we do Brahmanda, of course we do Pindanda. So in Pindanda, of course, you need to think about all these folks. Surya for your eyes, Chandra for your ears, Chandra, not only Chandra, Chandra, Soma, Mitra, Yama, and all the Abhimanis of direction. Kubera, Ishanaha, Indra, Agni, our Guru Yama, who is also called Dakshina Sapati, Nirriti, Varuna, Vayu, and then Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma. They all comes in 10 directions. Our Vedic philosophy says there are 10 directions in the universe, not related to this material sense, but if you go into the interstellar space, there is also direction. Okay, and the sound comes from all these directions. So all these chaps are also Tattva Abhimanis. Mouth, Varuna, speech, Agni, Saraswati, Bharati, Parvati, and then your Karma Indriyas, Indra, Kubera, Pradhana Vayu, Mitra, Yamuna, Daksha Prajapati, Svayambu, Manu, Upendra, so many things. So you need to do these revisions and understand none of the souls, some of them may be great Tattva Abhimani Devatas, but some of us, like us, by implication, what about us who are the smallest and the most inferior most souls out there? What chance do we stand to understand? So Svayambu is very humble here. Look at Swayambu's humility when he is praying. Nainat devaha apnuvan, because he himself is a deva. He is the 10th rank. Svayambu Manu is the 10th rank in the Vedic pantheon. And he himself says, Na ena devaha apnuvan. Yeah. So when our Svayambu says, Manaso javiyaha naina devaha apnuvan, it's a very profound statement. Then it also can make us a little bit depressed. If none of us can actually know him, why bother to do all the Shastra Abhyasa and make a philosophical journey and so on? So that is another question. That's for another day. But moving on to this, in this verse, when it says, Manaso javiyaha na ena devaha apnuvan, but, there is always a but, Purvamarshate. Yeah. These fellows do not know the Paramatma, but this Paramatma knows them always. The Paramatma is omniscient. He knows everything about everything in the past, present, and future simultaneously. So that is the greatness of the omniscience of Paramatma, which is picked up in this Purvam Arshate. So that literally means Sarvajna. Purvam Arshate. Purvam means from before, from the beginning of time, beginningless, eternally. Those are all the ideas of Purvam. Arshat comes from the root word Rishadatu, Rishak Jnane. So knowing, Arshat means knowing. He knows all from before. So this is the situation. The souls, Krishna has also said that, right? He says, I know all the births that you have taken, but you don't know me. And Krishna has kind of given us that idea in Gita. That is exactly what here Svayambu is saying when he says Purvam Arshate, that he knows about everybody, and our knowledge of him is very, very limited. Okay? And he qualifies this further by another beautiful verse here. Tat davato anyan atyeti tishtat. Okay. So davataha means running towards him. Who are running towards him? All these tattvabhimani devatas, and also us who are doing this satsang for years, we are also running towards him. Davataha anyan. But tat, that Brahman is also called tat, you know that, right? Tataha means that which is all pervasive. So, and it also means that, yeah. So that Brahman, atyeti, he is beyond all this. He surpasses all of these entities that are running towards him. Although these chaps are running towards him, he is even running even faster. And this is the beauty. He is running faster, staying in one place. Tishtat. He is just staying in one place, but he's also running faster than everybody else. So this is this kind of contradictory attributes of Brahman. Yeah, Achintya Adbhuta Shakti that we discussed in so many occasions in this forum. Again, that is the idea. He is Adbhuta, he is Achintya, he's got this Aishwarya Shakti. That is why he started with Ishavasya. So again, Katha Upanishad has picked up those ideas, if you remember. Asino Duram Rajati, Shayano Yati Sarvataha. He's sleeping, but he's moving around. He's sitting, he's going everywhere. All these contradictory attributes. So that is what Svayambu is speaking. That davato anyan atyeti tishtat. Okay. So manaso javiho na ena devaha apnuvan tad davato anyan atyeti tishtat. So I hope you're able to appreciate so many qualities that are being brought about here. So I am going to take a break for 1 minute because this is exactly what Krishna said in chapter 15, verse 16, 17, and 18. The last, those three verses are so amazing. So let's repeat that again because we are never tired of reciting chapter 15. So who wants to take up 16, 17, 18? You can take turns or you can do it together.
Shall I go?
Mm-hmm.
द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके क्षरश्चाक्षर एव च क्षरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्तव्यय ईश्वरः यस्मात् क्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रतितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
Beautiful, Veena-ji. Thank you so much. So look at that last, that 16, 17, 18. That is exactly what our Svayambu Manu is talking about. And look at this beauty of these verses. Veda Vyasa is a Sarvajna, right? He is Narayana's incarnation in himself. And look how he has placed 16, 17, and 18. 16 is the Jiva, 17 is Kutastha Akshara, and 18 is the Purushottama. 16, 17, and 18. This is a very popular number in this forum because Prashna Upanishad, Shodasha Kala Purushaha, Shraddam Kam Vayur Jyoti Rapaha Pruthivyam Indriyam Manaha Annam Annad Viryam Tapo Mantraha Karma Loka Lokeshu Cha Namacha. So these fences, 16th Jiva, Lakshmi, Vishnu, they are all captured in this. Again, our Shastras say the same thing. Yeah, the Samanvaya of Shastra is uniform. It is only our problem that sometimes we don't understand it and we just misinterpret it. It is our problem. But when we look at it from a bird's eye view, they're saying the same thing. So what is the idea here? This Paramatma, Yasmad Ksharam Atito Aham Aksharad Apicha Uttamaha. So for Ksharas he is Atitaha. For Kutasto Akshara is Uttamaha. Look at those words, Atitaha, Uttamaha. They have various different meanings. We have dealt with that. So this 18th entity is way above everything else. 17, 16 and all the other Tattvabhimani Devatas, he is way above. Okay. Now is the problem. If this guy, if this Paramatma is so way above everybody, what are we trying to do here? This is like this elephant, right? If you take this Paramatma as this elephant, there are all these fellows. This could be different philosophies, different religions, different schools of Vedanta, and each one of us with our own swabhavas. We are all thinking that we are touching this Paramatma, but do we actually know him properly? Are we capable? That is the question. Are we actually capable of knowing him? Because he is yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. And look at this Keno Upanishad. This is a very important verse of Talavakara Upanishad or Keno Upanishad. Yasya amatam tasya matam yasya naveda saha avijñātam vijānatam vijñātam avijānatam, says the Keno Upanishad. There is also a Persian proverb which is very similar to his. He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. Which is what we are all at this point. We actually do not even know that we do not know about him. Yeah. So, and again, Katha also picks up those verses. Ashabdam, asparsham, arupam, avyayam, tata arasam, nityam, agandavachayat. You know, these are all profound statements of Upanishad that constantly tell us, yes, there is this entity called Sarvagnya Paramatma who is there, but can I know him? Can I know him about some aspects of him? Because this is the problem of the modern day atheists and charvakas. And many of us also have doubts. And the Upanishads tell us even aparoksha jnanis, like all the devatas, including Svayambu or Manu, are also saying we have some idea of him, but we don't know him fully. So when that is the situation, what is our state? So how do we get to know him? Yeah, how do we get to know him? We can all sit here and talk about it, but how do we get to know him? Okay. So how do we get to know him? He can be known only through the Vedas. We have done the Jayatirtha statement, right? He can be known only through the Vedas. Vedas can be understood only through Brahma Mimamsa Shastras. So if you use Brahma Sutra to understand the Vedas and the Upanishads, then what will happen? You will know that he is an abode of infinite auspicious attributes and without defect. And when you know that, unless you know this idea and then you contemplate on him, you will never get to see him. Because that is what you need to have. You need to get his grace to be able to see him first. Aparoksha jnana. Because our Tattvabhimani Devatas are all aparoksha jnanis. And we should also aim to achieve that aparoksha jnana as per our capacity. This is called Bimba Sakshatkara. Okay, so we have to, our first goal is to achieve that aparoksha jnana. And what is the process? Our acharyas have told us this is the process. You need to first go to the Vedas, understand it through Brahma Sutras. Now the question is, you are saying, yeah, it's all well and good to know the Vedas and understand the Vedas and understand using Brahma Sutras, but how do we even understand the Vedas and the Brahma Sutras? That is our fundamental problem, because in modern times, we live in such societies where we don't even have time to do this. How can we understand the Vedas and the related Shastras properly? Do we have a hotline with God? Some people may think that they have a hotline with God, that they will directly go to God for everything. It is their view, but most world philosophies have accepted the fact that an access to the President of India, I as a normal citizen cannot directly go to the President of India. There are so many intermediaries here. And then there is this personal secretary, who is the most important person. I have to first get the personal secretary's grace and permission, and then he is going to let me go and see the president. Okay, so that personal secretary, messenger of God, okay, that becomes very important in Vedas. Yeah, do we have a hotline with God? Some people may think so, but the Shastras are not telling that. The Shastras are telling there is always a messenger of God. Most religions of the world accept the messenger of God. Okay, that interface. And Isha Upanishad is very, very careful in this. And it says, Tasmin apo matarishva dadati. Okay, this is not an, in my view, this particular sentence is one of the most profound statements of Svayambu Manu in the 4th mantra of Isha Upanishad, where he says, none of us can actually know about this Paramatma. None of us can actually reach him, but there is a route. What is that route? that root through Matarishva. Tasmin Napo Matarishva Dadati. So says Svayambu Manu in the fourth mantra. Matarishva, how can we understand this concept of Matarishva? He could be the Guru. He could be that Guru who can give you that knowledge and take you there. He could be your messenger who can take your messages and pass it on to the Supreme Paramatma. He could either be your Guru, or he can take all the good things that you do and pass your stuff on to the Paramatma. That is the interface. And the Shastras, the Vedas are very clear. Isha Upanishad is part of the Shukla Yajur Veda. It is an Apaurushaya Veda. And that Apaurushaya Veda is the supreme source of authority. And that supreme source of authority is telling through Svayambu Manu that you can know this Paramatma. Tasmin apo matarishva dadati. Okay. Now, what I want to do is this particular Tasmin apo matarishva dadati takes probably an hour to understand this. So, what I am going to do is I'm going to do this last verse. Tasmin. What does Tasmin mean? Apo. What does Apo mean? What does the full scale of Matarishva mean? Dadati means. So we will deal with that in the next class. But what I want to introduce is the greatness of this verse from Isha Upanishad. I'm going to just give you a hint here as to what it actually means. Matarishva. This is the first level interpretation of what Matarishva means. Matari and Shwa. Shwa means that which goes, that which moves. Where does it move? In Matari. Matari means sky or the Akasha. What moves in the sky or the Akasha or the atmosphere? The wind moves in the atmosphere. What is the other name of wind? Vayu. What is the other name of Vayu? Prana. Okay. There is a very famous sukta which I want to introduce here as to what is that gravity of the sentence that Svayambu has used. Tasmin apo matarishva dadati. What is it that he is talking about? So we have to go to our core text, Rig Veda. There is a particular sukta. First one, as you know, is Shatarshi Mandala. In Shatarshi Mandala, 141st Suktam is called Balitta Suktam. That talks about who this Matarishva is. Okay. So before I play that, and I want to conclude today's session by actually now I'll play this audio. Let's appreciate what the Balitta Suktam is saying. Then I just want to give a 2 minutes hint as to what it means and then close today's session. So just bear with me. I hope the IT works.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Balitha Suktam Balitha Tadvapushe Dhayidarshatam Devasya Bhargassaha Soyato Jani Yadhimupahvarate Sadhate Matirritasya Dhena Anayanta Sasruta Vrikshavapah Pituman Nityaha Shaye Dvitiyama Saptashevasu Madrisho Tritiyamasya Vrishabhasya Dohase Dashapramatinjanajantayoshanaha Niryadim Buddhanan Mahishasya Varpasa Ishana Sashyavasa Suraya Yadhi Manu Pradivo Madhvadhave Guha Santam Matarishva Madhayati Prayat Pituh Paraman Niyate Parya Vrikshudha Virudhodam Surohati Ubhayadasya Janushaya Jinvata Adidya Vishtho Abhavad Ghrina Shuchihi Adin Matra Ravi Shadya Swashujirahim Syamana Vurviya Piva Vridhem Anuyat Purva Aruhat Sanajuvo Ninavyasi Shvavara Sudhavate Om.
Excellent. So I hope you were I hope you were able to hear this all right. So this is one of the profound suktas of Rig Veda, talks about Balikta Sukta. So do some Google search, understand what this sukta is. It is actually called Prana Agni Suktam. There are 13 verses. And in these 13 verses, the first five verses, that is called the first varga of the suktam, that varga is called Balikta Suktam. Remember 5. That 5 is again not a coincidence, okay? That 5 is the 5 pranas that you talk about, yeah? So, that 5 verses talks about this Balikta to give us an explanation who this Matarishwa is, yeah? Matarishya Matayati. Okay, so, it actually, this Balikta Suktam talks about the 3 avatars of Vayu or Prana celebrated in the Balikta Suktam of Rig Veda. And the Rig Veda concludes this Matarishwa is that intermediary or the interface who can actually take you to the Paramatma. He is the Guru, is what the Rig Veda says. So let's look at what this Matarishwa, I've just told you in the previous slide, this Matarishwa is Vayu. Okay? Even Vayu is etymological. If you look at Vayu, Va, Aya and U. Va means Balam or strength. Aya means Jnana. U means the highest, Utkrishta, the highest Bala and Jnana, the being with the highest strength and knowledge in the Jiva Koti. That's in among the Jivas, that being that has the highest strength and the highest knowledge is Vayu. Okay? And this Vayu is celebrated in the Prana Agni Sukta. So what does Prana mean? Prana. Pra and Ana. Ana means Anacheshtayam, Prakrishta Anacheshtayam, that which gives volition to everything. Okay? That is Vayu. Look at Agni. What is Agni? A plus Ga plus Ni. Ga means Gachati or Gamayati. The English word go comes from Ga. Go is an activity. Aga means that which is inert. But this thing that gives volition to everything that is inert is called Agni, not the material fire. Yeah, we have done this before. So when you look at Vayu, when you look at Agni, when you look at Prana, and when you look at Matarishwa, which is what our Guru here, Svayambu Manu has said, Tasmin Napo Matarishwa Dadati. Okay? And this Balikta Sukta talks about something called Matihi. It talks about Pruksho. He talks about Dasa Pramatim. Okay, so these are all profound verses of Rig Veda. For some schools of Vedanta, it is one of the biggest verses. Now here, I've got a picture from Sushrut. So Sushrut is, I don't know whether he's attending today. He's gone to Udupi. And from there, he went to Ambalpadi. He went to this Narasimha Devasthana. And he sent me some images last week. So I thought I have to put this in. Sushrut probably is back tomorrow. So Sushrut has shared these images from Ambalpadi near Udupi, where you have this Hanumanta, Hanuman. What does Hanu mean? We'll look at this in the next class. He celebrated as Matihi. Pruksho. Who is Pruksho? Bhimasena. Celebrated as Pruksho in Rig Veda. Who is Dasapramatim? Purna Pragnacharya. He is celebrated as Dasapramatim here. Okay? These guys have been described as Matarishwa in the Rig Veda. Okay? So what hopefully we will do is, we will continue this profound discussion of the Isha Upanishad to understand who Matarishwa actually is. And I want to spend another hour talking about Tasmin Apo Matarishwa Dadati and understand how the Guru is very important to take us in this journey of souls. And how do we approach, how do we consider who is a Guru, and how do we, understand this Guru and so on. For that, for us to understand, join me in the next session to go through Matarishwa. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to close today's session with a couple of announcements. I'm traveling next week. So next Sunday, there is no class. And what I hope to do is the following Sunday, I'll be in India. So I want to do this class from India in about a fortnight's time, about talking about all the greatness of Matarishwa. And the following week, that is, I think is the 16th of April, Devalji is coordinating chapter 17th of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so we got a few things organized for the next 3 weeks, but next Sunday, we are going to not have a Upanishad Chintana. Unless somebody wants to do some revision class, you're very welcome. But I am not around next Sunday. Okay. So on that note, let's close today's session with Sri Krishna Pranamastu, and we can take any questions if there are any pressing questions at this point. Okay, excellent. So no questions today. So Harish, could I ask you to take us through Om and we close today's session? Excellent. Hare Krishna, everyone. Take care. We'll catch up in a fortnight's time. Hare Krishna.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ರೀ ತುಂಬಾ
Thank you.
ಸಂತೋಷ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು
ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುಭ್ಯೋ ನಮಃ.
Hare,
See you.
Hare.